Hey guys, so I said I was going to make a separate video about the cancer stuff and getting diagnosed, so I want to share a little bit of that in detail. So as I had shared prior, I was pretty deep into my program. I was in AA. I was pretty deep into intercession and like deliverance and evangelism and deep into my Christian faith. And I was having a lot of like visions and signs and dreams from God pretty early on. Um, and I remember this, I tie these together and maybe they're not tied together, but in my mind, in my heart, I feel like they have a lot to do with each other. But I remember I had this dream, and it was one of like many. I was getting constant dreams from God at this point. And I was really struggling with my mental health. My husband was struggling with his mental health. And I felt like for some reason, like I just kind of felt like something was coming. And I remember I was like saying, I was like making these comments because I had picked up a second job. I was working as a hairdresser. I was working at the hospital, and then I was trying to like, because my husband he was unwell and he just like stopped working, and I was like, I mean, he was doing side jobs, but he was not bringing in very much money, not what we were accustomed to. So I picked up another job. And I remember the day that I went to the hospital, like I shared before, I have intracranial hypertension, and I was getting these migraines and my vision was messed up. And I remember I had this ongoing migraine, and I was getting like blind spots in my vision, and usually it's indication that my pressure is high. But I was on medication. I was like taking the Diamox, which is what's prescribed for my condition. I was taking it as prescribed, like in kind of high doses, and I usually didn't have issues with my vision while I was on medication. And I just remember getting this like urge to go to the hospital. But I like really, I had this condition for 10 years by this point. Like I was like used to it. It was just a part of my life. I was like, it can wait. It's not like deadly. I'll be fine. So I remember the day that I went. I was gonna pick up a shift at the salon, and I was working my regular job, and I reached out to the salon manager because she like a message came through. We were on a group text, and she said there was a shift that needed to be picked up, and I answered it immediately. And I got this thought: if I don't get this shift, I'm gonna go to the hospital and see what's going on with my vision. And I answered her immediately. I was gonna go. That's my logic. I'm like, if I don't go to work, I'm going to the hospital, because that's illogical. But so I I I reach out to her, and I'm like, I'll pick up this shift or whatever. And she reaches back out to me like 15-20 minutes later. She's like, oh nope, already got it covered. And I'm like, okay. So I didn't pick up the shift. I finish out my work day at my primary job, and then I go to pick up my daughter, and I'm driving home, and I get this thought like I should probably go to the hospital because I'm like seeing blind spots while I'm driving. And it's happened before. Usually the Diamox brings the pressure down and the vision regulates, but I was already on Diamox, so I'm like, this is weird. And I'm thinking like, is it like a sinus infection? Do I have sepsis? Like what, like could it like a sinus infection have like gotten into my like spread and become like systematic? Like all this stuff was going through my head because I had never experienced being on Diamox for that long and like not, and my vision not correcting. So I'm like, I guess I should go to the hospital. So I get home, and I'm going to share this too because I feel like this ties in, like I said. And I was getting a lot of dreams, and I had a dream like maybe a week or two before that where I was like sitting in front of somebody and I couldn't see their face, and I think it was God, and he was like telling me something. And I woke up and I could not remember what he was telling me, but I swear, guys, I think he was warning me about what was coming. Like, I swear, because I was making these like prophetic comments. I like had this urge to go to the hospital. And when I went to the hospital, like we called my mother-in-law over to watch my daughter, and me and my ex-husband were getting prepared to go to the hospital. And I was like packing overnight stuff. Like I was like, I don't think I'm coming home. And I was packing like an overnight bag, which with my condition, you don't get admitted. It's like it's quick in and out. They run some tests. You might get like a spinal tap, but I'm usually home that night within a few hours. But I packed an overnight bag, and I remember talking to my husband earlier that week, and I had made a comment to him where I was like, what if I get sick and I'm like bedridden? I'm like, what if I can't keep going? Because I'm working 2 jobs, you know, at this point. And he's like leisurely working at whenever he wants to, whenever he can, because he's like in mental crisis, having his own issues. And I'm like, what if I have to stop? What if I'm like bedridden? And he's like, then we'll deal with it. And I remember that conversation, and I remembered that dream. And then I think I look back and I remember the way I packed for the hospital. Like, I remember what I was saying, the statements I was making. We drive to the hospital, and then the guy comes in. We go to an Advent. I didn't want to go to a local hospital. I wanted to go to an Advent Health, which is it's a better hospital system. But we have to drive like an hour away to get there. And I was like adamant I did not want to go to a local hospital because the ones near me just weren't very good. Which again is like another odd thing, but that's what happened. And so we drive to an Advent, and the guy comes in, he's like, why are you here? And I'm like, well, I have this condition and I'm having issues with my vision. He's like, yeah, but why didn't you go locally? And I'm like, I don't know. I just didn't trust them. I wanted to go to a place that I knew was good. And he's like, okay. So he goes and like runs blood work, gets a baseline, gets like basic tests done. And he comes back in and he's like, your blood work, your white blood cell count came back at the level of somebody that has like a septic infection or has cancer. And I'm like, what? And I'm thinking back and I'm like, I haven't had any symptoms. Like, I have been working a lot. Like, I've been tired, but like I've been working a lot, and I like cancer's not even crossing my mind. I'm like, it's this sinus, like I have a sinus infection. Like it's whatever's going on with my eyes has to do with this. I have some kind of sepsis or infection. And I'm like, no way, it's cancer, you know? And I remember he's like, we're gonna have to transfer you. And I'm like, okay. So me and my ex-husband, we're not really thinking much of it. I'm getting transferred. And I remember talking to the nurse as I'm getting transferred. I'm like, do you think like I'll be home in a couple days? And the nurse looks at me and she goes, I think you're gonna have a long road of recovery. And I'm looking at her like, what? And I don't have a medical like background. Like, I work in the medical field, but I don't have like an in-depth medical, like, I don't put 2 and 2 together that my blood work could be a cancer diagnosis. I'm not putting that together, you know, but she's looking at me like, you know, like she knows something that I don't. And I'm like, I'm just thinking like, what? So I go to the next Advent, and I start getting seen by the hematologist. They're running more tests. And I remember this woman's coming in, this hematologist, and my primary doctor, I don't know why I know this, but she was Christian. Somebody told me she was Christian. I guess they knew I was a Christian. I don't know, but the lady was Christian. She was a really nice doctor. And then I have this hematologist coming in, and the lady's coming in, and she's like, you're fine. We're running some tests, but you don't really need to be here. You can do this outpatient. You're walking, you're talking, you can feed yourself, you're fine. And she comes in like 3 times and says the same thing. You're fine. You don't need to be here. You're totally fine. You have some oddities in your blood work, but you're fine. You don't need to be here. And then this Christian doctor's coming in, and I'm like, ma'am, I need to stay until we figure out what is going on. I'm like, if I have some kind of infection, you guys cannot send me home. And she's like, I promise. We're not going to send you home. And I'm like, well, this lady keeps coming in saying that you guys are going to send me home. She's like, we're not going to send you home. I'm going to figure out what's going on. It could be like an autoimmune disease. It could be all these things. Like, I promise we're not going to do that. And I'm like, okay. And then the lady comes in again, and she's like, you don't need to be here. You can go home. And I'm at this point, I'm like, they're going to discharge me, like whatever. So I get on the phone and I call my mother-in-law who's staying with my daughter. And I'm like, I think we're going to get discharged soon. Like, and Maddie gets on the phone, my daughter, and I'm like, honey, I think I'm going to be coming home soon. I can take you to the park. Like, I'm sorry you had to wait for me. We can go home and go to the park later. And she's like, okay, you know. And then I get off the phone, and I remember a different hematologist comes in. It's male this time, and his eyes are like deer in headlights. And he looks at me and he's like, you have leukemia. And I'm like, what? This lady just said, I just told my daughter I was going to take her to the park. Like, this lady just told me I was going home. He's like, no, you have acute leukemia. He said, if you don't get transferred and get into treatment right now, you will be dead. Like, I will be dead in the next few months. It's aggressive. It's uncommon. And you will not survive this. And I'm like, what? And it's like my jaw just like drops to the floor. And I remember my husband at the time is there, and he just like puts his head down and he starts crying. And I'm looking at him and I'm looking at the doctor and I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, almost like this is not real. Like, no way. This is not happening to me. And so I start thinking about my life at that moment. I start reflecting on all of the things that I did in my addiction, all of the relationships that ended, all of the people that I hurt, my family members that um, all the things that I put them through. I start thinking about everything, and I'm looking at my husband. And my husband, I remember he like picks his head up and he looks at me and he goes, "What about life insurance?" And at that moment, and he might not have meant it the way that I took it, but at that moment, you know, our marriage is like in shambles already. It's very like uh consumerism driven. It's very superficial. It's like not godly at all, even though I'm trying to make it godly. It's like very money driven. And I'm looking at him like is this the last person I'm gonna see before I die? Like it like I wow. And so I'm just looking at him and I don't even react because I'm just in shock at this point. And I remember I got out my phone and I texted my family and I texted my mom and I texted my ex best friend who our relationship had ended, and I told her, and I loved this girl so much, and it was like this heartbreak that I went through when we stopped being friends because I got into a really toxic relationship and she just didn't stick around to watch it, and I don't blame her. I texted her, and then my family, I remember, shows up at the hospital, and this is before I get transferred again to start treatment, and they told me I wasn't going to be able to get a lot of visitors because my immune system was going to be compromised, but I was going to be in the hospital for a month getting treatment. And I didn't think I was going to make it out of the hospital at all. I did not think I was going to survive. So my family comes surrounding me, and it was almost like we were saying our last goodbyes, and I'm like apologizing, and I'm sorry for all the crap I put you guys through. I love you. Like, I love you so much. And my ex-husband was there, and he's witnessing all this, and then we go to the next place, which is where I started my treatment for a month. And he stays there with me for a month. I start treatment. I lose my hair. I have a cardiac event at one point because I'm getting all this information. It's like the news is getting worse and worse and worse. I'm struggling with my faith. I'm so angry at God because I'm actually trying to do the right thing and I'm committed for the first time in my life, and I get struck with this illness. And so my ex-husband is struggling to be there, and he stayed with me that first month, and then I got released, and I survived, you know, treatment. I was responding to treatment, thank God. I had a lot of prayers going out for me constantly, and I attribute my remission to those two people lifting me up in prayer. I don't think I would have made it had I not had so many people lifting me up and covering me, and praying for my healing and showing up at the hospital and laying hands on me, like you name it, guiding me, having me walk through scriptures, healing scriptures, teaching me how to stand on the promises. Like I was angry at God, but I knew I needed him. I needed God. Like I could not do it without him. I was not going to make it without him. And so I clung to him as hard as I could. And I was released from that month, and I went to outpatient treatment where I would be home for a few weeks, and then I'd have to go readmit to the hospital for a week and do intensive chemo, and then I'd be out for a few weeks and then go readmit, and that went on for like a year. And my husband made it through maybe another month of that, and then he just stopped showing up. He stopped coming. He stopped taking me to the appointments. It just became too much for him, and that eventually led to separation. Him finding another person, another woman, while we were separated and going through the divorce process, and he broke away from me, and we got divorced, and that's a whole nother story in itself. That was very intense. But so I went through a year. I got into almost remission. They do this something called deep remission testing where like you can come back with like your initial results can be clear, like you're cancer free, but then they do deep remission testing where if you even have like a couple cells, a couple cancer cells, it comes back positive. And so I remember I was stuck, like I had responded to treatment, and then I was stuck at like 13 cells, 14 cells, 12 cells, and then we got down to 10 cells, and then we got down to like 3 cells. And so my treatment kept getting extended, and then this pill comes out on the market, which is an inhibitor for the very rare and hard to treat mutation that I had. um, an inhibitor to target that mutation comes out while I'm like at the end of my treatment, like literally right in the nick of time, and it gets me over the hump into remission. And then I'm able to get my bone marrow transplant. And that was another thing, like another God's timing, God providing. Like, I made it by the skin of my teeth, guys, by the skin of my teeth. Um, so I finally get to the bone marrow transplant, and that is where you go through total body radiation, which it made me infertile. I was um not in a place where like I didn't freeze eggs or anything in advance, so but I wanted to have more kids. We were actually trying to conceive before I got pregnant, but when I got the news of my cancer diagnosis, I chose not to freeze the eggs because I wanted to go right into treatment. And I thought that I was going to have my husband there, and he didn't really want more kids at the time. And I thought maybe I didn't understand the full gravity of like the intensive treatment that I was going to have to go through. And so I chose not to freeze my eggs. I thought maybe I would make it and still be fertile. But I did become infertile from the total body radiation, I'm pretty sure. I'm showing to be an early ovarian failure right now. But so I lost track of where I was. But so I go through the bone marrow transplant. I make it through the transplant, and I am completely in remission at this point. The transplant I stay in the hospital for a couple of months. I'm released to my 100 days. I basically start my recovery, which recovery from bone marrow transplant, if you're not familiar, it can be like a year, 2 years. It's a long time. So I am still recovering from my bone marrow transplant. I actually have to re-get all of my inoculations from childhood again. I'm in the aftermath. I'm facing infertility. I have lingering symptoms, but not anything too intense. And a scripture that I stood on through that whole process was God will restores him, and the Lord is, gosh, I can't remember it now. The Lord is with him in his sick bed and restores him to full health. That was like one that I stood on constantly. And he did. He is still being restored, but he did come through, and he did restore me to, I'm almost to full health outside of probable infertility. And so the Lord sustains him in his sickbed, and in his illness restores him to full health. Oh, that was bothering me. I couldn't remember it. That was a big one for me. I really, I repeated that scripture over myself every day, multiple times a day, constantly. Every time I got a bad report, every time I got news that was not looking good, every time I was facing a possible, for me, my mortality, a possible death sentence, that was what I stood on, and it carried me through, and he came, he fulfilled that promise in my life. So that's where I am today. It's a little bit about my story of getting diagnosed with leukemia, and where God was in that process. And he was all over it. He was everywhere. And I didn't get a, overnight miracle, which is what I hoped for because I had seen it in other people. But he restored me slowly over time. He allowed me to be receptive to treatment. I had to walk through that process. I had to be stripped of everything that I thought that I was. My life got stripped away from me. My identity got stripped away from me. Everything that I was putting before him, basically. And I'm not saying that's why this happened or what, that he did. I don't think he did any of it, but that was the fruit of walking through something like this, and choosing to keep my faith intact and choosing to try to be obedient and choosing to try to heal with God through it. Everything that I thought that I thought that I was before this happened, all of the superficial ways I was living before, the superficial relationships that I had before, they all got stripped away, and I am in a period now of restoration and of newness, and these relationships that I have today are deep and real and strong and godly, and the life that I have is authentic, and I I wouldn't have wished what happened to me on my worst enemy, but I also would not trade the life or the process or the experience or the wisdom or the trust that I gained in God. The fruit of it, I would not trade for anything. So that is a little bit of that story. I hope that resonates with somebody, and I love you guys. I'm going to go rest now. I do want to share James chapter 2. I'm going to do a little bit of studying before I post a video on that, but that will be the next one. But anyway, all right, I love you guys. Take care.